Are you tired of having turkey every holiday meal? Or have you had so many holiday meals that you finally need a break? I've got the perfect holiday dinner makeover for you. Baking your own dinner rolls is simple. It's only 7 ingredients that everybody has in their home. I've started with a beautiful dough here. I'm allowing it to rise. I brought the ingredients together and kneaded it for about 5 minutes. It's important to set it aside in a humid, warm area to make certain that it'll rise, and then we'll make some beautiful little dinner rolls. For every great meal, you need a great protein to anchor it. I've got a beautiful cut of beef here, prime rib roast, bone in. The bone is going to give it incredible flavor. In addition to that, we want something to break up that fat a little bit, so we're going to use these beautiful Brussels sprouts. We're going to make a casserole, caramelize them first, and make them very pleasant. These beautiful heirloom carrots will be fragrant with just a slight bit of sweetness and help to balance out the richness of that powerful beef. It's important to start with the right ingredients. So if you've got good, fresh ingredients and you don't need that many, a few simple ingredients can make an incredible meal. In addition to that, it's important to have the right equipment. I've got some great heavy bottom cast iron, which is so nice because the residual heat that builds up allows me to cook and continue to cook without steaming or boiling the food. I can really get a good, powerful sear and develop flavor. To start the goose fat potatoes, I've got a large stock pot and I've got the strainer insert. I'm just going to put that in. And then I've got russet potatoes. So russet potatoes, when they're baked, are nice and flaky. They're not really high in starch, so they will break apart quite nicely. Now I'm going to cook these with the skin on, and the reason I'm doing that is that the skin adds an element of flavor. They're really easy to peel afterwards, and I'm sure that after you see this technique and maybe try it, you'll do it that way again and again. With the potatoes in, it's important to season the water with a significant amount of salt. The water should taste of salt, and you'll have perfectly seasoned potatoes. I'm also going to put some bay leaves in. Bay leaves add a beautiful fragrance. We'll use them in the pot here, and then I'll roast them up later. So I'm starting with cold water. Be sure to start with cold water. We'll go on the stove top. Put it on high heat and then reduce it to simmer until it's just fork tender. Prime rib of beef is a decadent cut, and you can see the reason why it's so coveted. Look at all of that beautiful fat marbling throughout the beef. It makes it succulent, and it makes it tender, and it makes it very, very moist. We're going to accent that by adding some fresh garlic and some really beautiful toasted spices. I'm going to use some fresh fennel and some caraway seeds, but I'm going to use the heat of the oven to bring up those flavors and to release some of those essential oils, toasting it and making them incredibly fragrant. With no oil in the pan, all I have to do is put a couple tablespoons of these beautiful fennel seed, that familiar licorice sort of flavor, and then some caraway, and just a little toss and wait. As it begins to heat, the smoke will come up. You will see the smoke beginning to rise out of the pan. A couple light tosses and you'll see it toast just lightly. I can already get the fragrance coming off of these beautiful spices. The heavy bottom pan is really critical here because it does hold the heat, and this non-stick surface, look at that smoke. You can see that coming up already. It's filling the room with an incredible aroma. The mortar and pestle will make short work of these spices. And when you crush them, if you don't have a mortar and pestle, just put it inside some parchment and use the corner of the pan to really grind them up. But you can see as this comes out how it's lightly toasted, beautiful color, and this will add an element of flavor to the beef that makes it very distinct. I'm just going to grind these up, and as I do, you can see the smoke coming right out of that. That's just all of that incredible flavor being released. The Zwilling Pro boning knife is nice and thin. It also has a very flexible blade, which makes it easy to do this work. I'm going to use the honing steel and just bring up that edge to make sure I'm using a really nice sharp knife. Just takes a few passes and I've got a beautifully sharp edge. Now you can see this, again, that beautiful marbling on the beef. You can see the bones here. The bones are going to help to render down and make a beautiful pan sauce. But before I do that, I'm going to stud it with this fresh garlic. As it cooks, that aroma from the garlic will begin to permeate all of this beautiful meat. Preparing the garlic is as simple as removing the stem end And then just slicing it in half. When you do, it makes it really easy to peel and then quarter. So what I end up with is a nice sliver that can easily push down inside. Now that that's prepped, I'm just gonna have a look at this. So they call this a standing rib roast originally because it would literally rest on the bone, which is so great because it elevates it, allowing all the heat from the oven to get completely around the roast. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put these studs all over this roast and just using the boning knife, simply pierce in deep, give it a bit of a twist and remove it, and then take that beautiful little clove and press it inside. The nice thing is because it's a protein, as it cooks, it'll close back up and infuse it with incredible flavor. As you stud the roast, make sure to do it evenly. That way when you're slicing it and portioning it at the table, everybody will get some of these little nuggets. With the roast studded now and that garlic evenly dispersed, I'm gonna take some of this beautiful, have a look at this. And it's just, oh, the fragrance is incredible. So I'm just gonna spread that all over. And then begin to massage it right into the skin. I want to create a really nice crust. And whatever falls on the board, I'm going to take and I'm going to roll it in that so that I get it on all sides. And a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. And again, just massaging that into the surface. With the spice crust on, I want to add a little bit more fragrance, and fresh herbs are an easy way to add that. Thyme is a perfect complement to the roast. I'm just going to strip the leaves off, and if you go against the direction of the leaf, they strip off really easily. If you have a bit heavier thyme, the stem is quite thick, then you can easily strip it off. If it's young thyme like this, you can even leave the stems on and they'll cook down and render down quite nicely. Remember to season all sides of the beef. It's a really thick protein, and if you don't, you'll get one side that's seasoned and one side that's not. I'm using a coarse salt combined with some Himalayan salt and some really nice fragrant kosher salt. Just rubbing that into the surface. The smell is incredible coming off this roast already. Before I put the beef in the pan to begin to caramelize the flavor, I want to make sure to add some olive oil to the bottom of this pan. You'll see the Stab cast iron is perfect for this because I can get the high temperature up until it's smoking hot and then put the beef in, searing all sides. And what happens is that begins to develop a beautiful pan sauce. Now with the pan smoking hot, it's important to gently and carefully lay this in. I'm going to lay it in presentation side down, and I want to make sure that that stays good and hot. One of the benefits, again, of cast iron is the fact that when I put that cold protein in, it doesn't immediately cool the pan. And what that means is that I won't boil the meat. Instead, I get a really good heavy sear, and that means flavor, and that means texture when that sauce comes out. Flavor development at this stage is so key. Have a look at that. That's what you're looking for. And you need to make sure to do that on all sides. That fat cap is beginning to render down a little bit. I don't want to waste a single drop of that. That is all flavor, and what that'll do for the sauce in the end is make it incredibly rich. While the roast is finished searing, I'm going to put together carrots and celery and onion, and I always add leek as well. This flavor base is called mirepoix, and it's critical to getting perfect sauces. It's important when preparing mirepoix to make sure that all of the cuts are relatively the same size. That way you get even cooking. When the roast is completely seared, take it, set it aside, and then leave the cast iron on low heat. I'll throw the mirepoix in there, begin to saute and bring up all those beautiful flavors in the bottom of the pan. Even at this stage, it's so important to make sure to saute the mirepoix. Every level gives you another increment of really great flavor. Once you have that nice and translucent, you can add the tomatoes, tomatoes, the crushed tomatoes, are gonna add a real richness and be a really good marriage with all of that beautiful fat and the wine we're gonna use to deglaze the pan. Adding red wine does a couple things. First of all, it deglazes the pan and brings up all of that flavor off the bottom. So once I've deglazed the pan, then I can go back in with the roast, bone down, setting that right on top. That'll go directly into the oven at 350 degrees, uncovered, allowing it to crust up on the outside, rendering out that beautiful flavor out of the bones and some of that fat as well, and we'll have a great pan sauce to finish up. After approximately 90 minutes, you can see the dough is nicely risen. The texture is beautiful. You can see it's got a nice little bit of give there. So I'm just gonna use some flour the board, and then just gently roll this beautiful dough out. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? Bit more flour on top. And we're just gonna punch this down a little bit and then divide it. Look at that texture, it's just beautiful. Slicing it first in half and then dividing it evenly. Gently pressing it together, I'm gonna make these tiny little beautiful pillows. So I just press that in like that and just gently work that dough. Using the Stab brazier, I've got just enough high side to give myself a really nice crust on these. A little bit of olive oil on the bottom. I'm just going to coat the bottom nicely. Of course, the olive oil gives me not just the fact that it won't stick, but it also gives me a lot of flavor. It smells great too. So a good extra virgin olive oil. Then I'm just going to arrange these around the perimeter. They require another about 60 minutes of raising time where these will puff up and turn into a beautiful homemade bread. For the Brussels sprouts gratin, we're gonna go from ordinary to extraordinary by using some pork belly. So that richness from the pork fat will be a really nice complement to that little bit of bitterness that comes and is known in the Brussels sprouts, making that dish just beautiful to complement the beef. I've got this cast iron wooden handled fry pan up to temperature, medium-high heat. And I'll just add a tiny bit of olive oil. There will be quite a bit of fat rendered from the pork, and I'm going to use just a bit of butter as well. I'm using a little bit of both because I get elements of fat, but I get really great flavor as well. So you can see that starts in the pan to bubble up right away. Then what I'm going to do is just lay this bacon out. You can see I've got some pretty decent sized pieces. I want it to be a nice bite of bacon. With that pork belly sizzling away, I've started to work on the Brussels sprouts. Sprouts are part of the cabbage family and are typically very bitter, often ruined by just boiling them or even steaming them. Here, by sauteing them, we take that and we caramelize that. We get rid of that bitterness and astringency and turn them into little golden nuggets. Slicing them in half really opens them up on the inside, allowing all of that to come out. So all I've done is just sliced a few of these in half. This pork belly is nice and crispy now. It's rendered lots of fat, so there's lots of fat in the pan for the Brussels sprouts to cook in. So in they go. And I'll just give them a little bit of a toss. A bit of salt. And we'll saute those until they're golden brown. Look at this finish. This is the type of finish that you can count on with really great ingredients and beautiful cookware. So all of that flavor is now in the casserole. This would be a great dish just on its own. But I've made this dish so it would really appeal to those who might not care for Brussels sprouts. So I'm gonna add cream. Now, this 35% cream, it'll reduce to about half. So it becomes very thick and it becomes sauce-like. So I'm just gonna put just enough in to come up to almost covering. Then I've used panko crumbs. You can use whatever breadcrumbs you have. Old bread is perfect for soaking up some of that fat and that incredible flavor. And then I've got a beautiful Gruyere cheese. So I'm just gonna grate some of this Gruyere. Gruyere has a really nice flavor, but it melts beautifully. And you can see with this grater, make short work of it. And then what we'll do is just rain some of this down on top. Look at that. Beautiful. A little bit of pepper, a little bit of salt. I'll pop that in the oven at 350 degrees. It can cook right alongside my roast. When it's golden and bubbly, it's ready to go. The russet potatoes are now tender, and by fork tender, I just mean that the knife will pass through cleanly without any resistance. Now, I said it'd be easy. Now, watch how easy this, in fact, is to peel. You just literally run your knife along the edge. You can even use a spoon if you're not quite comfortable with the knife, but you can easily peel back that skin. And I'm telling you, the color, the texture, and the flavor of potatoes done with the skin on and then peeled afterwards is exceptional. I've got the roasting pan on here to my side. And I've just got it up about medium temperature because I want to melt some of that goose fat and then start to put this dish together. The duck fat is luxurious in flavor. It's something that has to be tried to really describe. So I don't need a lot of duck fat. A little goes a long way. It can be duck or goose fat. And then all I'm going to do is just take and slice these beautiful potatoes lengthwise. If they break up a little bit, don't worry about that. It's those extra little crispy bits that taste so great. I'm just going to start by laying them in the pan. Roasted garlic will go perfect with this. I'm not going to fuss around with this. I'm just going to take the whole bulb, slice it in half, and reveal those beautiful cloves. These are going in whole. I'm just going to tuck one at either corner. And I've got some fresh herbs. I've got some fresh rosemary. I'm just going to lay them on top. As they begin to crisp up, all of that flavor will just melt down into the potatoes. Seasoning with some coarse salt will help to draw out any extra liquid that's still in the potatoes or in the garlic, helping it to crisp up. That's really what I'm looking for, is that really nice crisp texture. So as I put these in, I'm going to turn them a few times, maybe once every 15 minutes. This is going to be a high temperature, so a 400-degree oven. Make sure to get that beautiful and crisp texture. Any holiday meal has great sides. We have the rich Brussels sprout gratin, which is creamy, but we want something that's a little more bright in flavor as well. We've got these gorgeous heirloom carrots, and I'm going to brighten it up using lemon zest. So a quick peel of these and slicing them, then they go into a pan. This is the last thing to prepare, and the great thing about this is you can prepare them, turn it off, and then just leave it sit. It can sit for a couple hours. Then when it's time for service, you just bring it up to temperature slightly to reheat, and they're perfect. With the carrots peeled and ready to slice, instead of just slicing rings or in a 45, I like to start off by a slice and then on a really sharp angle, roll it and slice again, roll, slice again, roll and slice again. And what you end up with is a really pretty cut that isn't too big. It's not quite bite-sized, but it's too bite-sized. Fries up in the pan really beautifully. So a little bit of butter in the pan, about a tablespoon, and about a tablespoon of olive oil. The two together again for that really great flavor. And the olive oil does raise the smoke point of the butter so that it doesn't burn. So you can see how beautiful these carrots look. They look great just here on the cutting board. Into the pan. Always careful when you've got hot oil in the pan. Drop those in. Then I want to add some bold flavors. Carrot is actually a pretty strong flavor. I'm going to add some sprigs of rosemary. The brightness of the lemon zest is going to just bring this to another level. So I'm just going to spread this throughout. And you can see how beautiful that looks already. Tiny little bit of salt, we don't need much. And I'll saute those, turning them several times until they're golden brown, and then turn it off and just let it rest. The great thing about the cast iron is the residual heat will keep it service temperature for 20 to 30 minutes, especially if you cover it. Beautiful, beautiful side dish. With our holiday dinner makeover almost complete, let's have a look at these dinner rolls. Oh my goodness. They are just incredible. These soft little pillows are gonna brown up in the oven. Light brush of butter. Butter will brown up nicely. It'll also help any of the fresh herbs and the salt stick to the top so that every bite is full of flavor. Black pepper, a good amount of black pepper. Some beautiful sea salt. Now I'm going to take some of this fresh thyme and just strip some of that on top as well. Look at that. 350 degree oven, and bake until golden brown.